Name on a Good Day, because we're kicking off a brand new series today called You Asked For It. So everybody say, you asked for it. You asked for it. This series is all about you. In fact, here's what we're doing in this series, and that is this, that at Christmas time, at our big Christmas service, we did a survey, and we asked you, what do you want to hear about? What are some of the topics that you want to learn about? What do you want your pastor to preach about? What are the things that are on your mind? And you answered that survey, and there were so many great answers there. And this is what we did. We took the top 4 answers on that survey of what you wanted to hear about, and we're putting them all together and making a message series out of it called You Asked For It. You asked for it, and we're going to bring it to you today. And this is a great opportunity for you to bring a friend. In fact, how many of you know somebody that needs a church home? Come on, right? This series is a great opportunity for you to bring them with you, invite them, and bring them on a Sunday to hear some of these messages that are on your heart. In fact, let me just kind of tell you what we're going to be talking about, some of the topics that we're going to be hitting in this series. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to deal with difficult people. How many of you know some difficult people in your life? Come on, if they're in the room, some of y'all are pointing. Don't do that. Come on. That's not good. But if you know people that are difficult to deal with, hey, we're gonna talk about that next week, and we're gonna learn some relationship principles. And then I was so excited that you asked for this. The third most asked for topic in the series is the Holy Spirit. And so the week after that, we're gonna talk about the Holy Spirit and what the Bible says about the Holy Spirit and His work in our life. And I'm so excited about that. And then at the end of the series, we're gonna talk about anxiety. We're gonna talk about stress. You said, hey, these are the things that we're dealing with in our lives. So we're gonna dive into that at the end of the series. But today, everybody say today. Today, we're going to talk about the number one topic that you guys asked for in the survey that we sent out, and it is very appropriate for today. We're going to talk about marriage. Now, I think it's very appropriate to be talking about that right now, because how many know what is 2 days from today? Come on, right? If you don't know what 2 days is from today, I'm helping you out today. I'm just telling you. 2 days from today is what? Tell me if you know what it is. It is Valentine's Day. In fact, let's just do a little survey all over the room. How many of you already have a Valentine's gift or some sort of plan for Valentine's? How many raise your hand? I already got it. All right. A few of you, how many don't have it? Here you go. Oh, no. Okay. Well, here's what we want to do. We are here for you, all right? And so what we're going to do today is I have a very special gift that I want to give away to a very lucky and blessed married couple today. It's called the Adventure Challenge for Couples. Maybe you've heard of it before. And so here's what we're going to do. I need every married couple in the house to stand on your feet. Come on, if you're married, stand up on your feet all over the room. Oh, come on. Can we give it up for all the married couples today? Come on. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. If you have been married 10 years or more, I want you to stay standing. Everybody else, not 10 years, sit down. Everybody, all right. Now, if you have been married, let's say 15 years or more, I want you to stay standing. If not, then all right, yeah, you guys are doing good. How about, let's do this, how about 20 years or more? Stay standing. Oh, we're starting to whittle it down a little bit now. All right, we're getting up to the big numbers, all right? How many 25 years or more you have been married? Stay standing, all right? If not, sit down. Wow. I'm not sure. Should I go incrementally? All right, let's do 26 years or more. Stay standing. Wow, that's pretty good. 27 years or more. 28 years or more. 30 years or more. Oh, we lost some right there. All right. 33 years or more. Stay standing. 35 years or more. Stay standing. Whoa, we lost it. Up there. 37 years or more. Stay standing. This is taking longer than I had anticipated. 40 years or more. Stay standing. Yeah. Whoa, come on. I'm going to jump on up. 45 years or more. Stay standing. Holy cow. 46 years or more. 47. Oh, we have a winner. Oh, no, over here. Oh, okay. 48. 40. Oh, did we lose one? 48 years. Give it up for Dugan and Carolyn. Come on, guys, come on. I have a special gift for my friends. 48 years. When's your anniversary?
It's actually 49.
49 years? And when's your...
December 21st.
So you just celebrated 49. Come on, give it up for these guys. Oh my goodness. That is amazing. Carolyn, you are a saint, I'm saying, putting up with Dugan for... I'm kidding. I love Dugan and Carolyn. These guys are amazing. 49 years. I think they ought to be preaching this sermon this morning. And here's the deal. We want to invest in you and in your marriage, and we want to bless you. Now, I know some of you are not married, and so the tendency would be to tune out, but I just want to tell you, even if you're not married today, do not tune out. I really believe that what we're going to talk about today is going to really affect everybody, that these principles that we're going to look at, they apply to marriage, but they apply to all relationships. And so we want to dive in to this idea of marriage. We want to create a moment for you to lead to a life being changed, to lead to a marriage being changed. And here's what we know about marriage is that marriage was God's idea, right? Like from the very beginning, it was his idea. You've heard me teach about it so many times, how God, the creation story, he created the heavens and the earth and all the things that he created. And each time he said it was good. He created man. He said it's very good. But then all of a sudden we hear that he says something is not good. And what was it that was not good? That it was not good that man would be alone. Like God never intended for us to live life alone. And so he said, I'm going to create a helpmate for Adam. And so he put Adam into a deep sleep. He took a rib from her. And then, you know the creation story. He woke Adam up, and there was Eve that God had created, and she doesn't have any clothes on, and Adam sees her, and he goes, whoa, man, right? And that's how she got her name. It's in the Bible. Go read it. It really is. Sorry, some of y'all are going, you've used that joke too many times. We're not laughing today. We're just not doing it. Now, I like that joke, but I also like the one about the little boy who one day in Life Kids, they were teaching about the creation story, and they taught the story how, God took the rib from Adam and created Eve and all of that. And so a few days later, the little boy was at home, and he's laying on the couch, and he's like acting like he's sick, and he's not feeling very good. And mom says, little Johnny, what's the matter? And he says, oh, I have a pain in my side. I think I'm going to have a wife. My son says I should go like this after my dad jokes, boom, And here's the deal, like God he created Adam and Eve, and he created them for relationship. He created them for marriage. And here's my point today is that God didn't just create them to be together. He actually gave them a task to do. He gave them a job to do. In fact, we find it in this passage. This verse I want us to look at in Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 15. Let's look at it together. It says, and the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to what? To work it and what? And take care of it. That God created Adam and Eve, he put them together, and then he gave them a job to do. He put them in the garden, and the job that he gave them to do was to work the ground, to work the garden, and to take care of it. And we pretty much probably, that story, but I want to look at a little different twist on it today. And here's kind of my main point, my main thought, and that is this, that God gave Adam and Eve, and he gave us, in Adam and Eve's situation, he gave them a physical garden to tend. But that wasn't the only garden that he gave them. He also gave them the garden of marriage. That this idea of a garden is actually a metaphor for what marriage is like. That God puts us in a relationship. He puts you in a married relationship, and that relationship is a garden. And God has given us that garden to maintain and to tend and to bring fruit out of that garden. Now, I don't know about you. Anybody here, raise your hand if you like to do yard work or gardening or anything like that. You raise your hand. All right. I'm not all that into it. I like my yard to look good. I just don't want to be the one to do it. Come on, you know what I'm saying, right? But we've all known those people, right? We've seen it in the neighborhood. They got that yard that is immaculate and it's perfect. Like everything is like every blade of grass is in place, and it's like looks like Augusta National and Wrigley Field had a baby. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're the ones that are getting the awards for the best yard in the neighborhood and all of that kind of stuff. In fact, I love to golf, and I went to a golf course one time that is kind of one of those bucket list type golf course. You know what I'm talking about? And this place was immaculate, and I'm not kidding. Like actually on one of the tee boxes, one of the maintenance guys was out there literally with a pair of scissors cutting the blades of grass so that it would be perfect. How many of you would like your yard to look like that, right? And then there are those other people, you know what I'm saying? the people in your neighborhood, the ones that it doesn't look like that. It's like there's weeds and there's dirt patches and there's letters from the HOA in the mailbox, and you know what I'm talking about, right? And we've all seen both of those. And the main difference between the yard that looks perfect and the yard that has weeds and dirt patches, what's the main difference? The main difference is a little time, a little love, a little attention, a little hard work. And here's what I know is that God has given us, if you're married, God has placed you in a garden. He has given you a garden to maintain. And the difference is really all about a little bit of love, a little bit of time, a little bit of attention, a little bit of work. In fact, it reminds me of this passage in Proverbs chapter 24. Let's take a look at what the proverb writer says in verse number 30. He says, I passed by a lazy person's field and by the vineyard of someone with no sense. And thorns had grown up everywhere. And the ground was covered with what? With weeds. And the stone walls had fallen down. And I thought about what I had seen. I learned this lesson from what I saw. A little sleep. You take a nap and you fold your hands and lie down to rest. And suddenly you will be poor as if you had been robbed. And you will have as little as if you had been held up. What is the proverb writer saying? He's saying, hey, if you neglect any area of your life, you're going to turn around and what's going to happen is it's going to be overrun with weeds. And this applies to our marriage, guys, that our marriage is a relationship to be cultivated. It's a garden to be worked. And if we will love and if we will cherish and if we will work and if we will give time and if we will give focus and if we will give attention, then our marriage will flourish and it will have incredible harvests of blessing in our marriage. But if we neglect, come on. Even just a little bit. Just take a little nap on your relationship, on your marriage, then it won't be long and you will look up and your marriage will be overrun with weeds. And that's what I want to talk about today. In fact, I only have 2 points. Nudge your neighbor and tell him that doesn't mean anything. Come on, just tell him. I only have 2 points today. But if we're going to maintain and cultivate the garden of our marriage that God has given us, then there's 2 things that we're going to have to do. Number one, if you're going to write it down, is that you're going to have to learn to pull some weeds. Everybody say, pull some weeds. If you want your marriage to be blessed, there are going to be times when you're going to have to get down on your hands and knees and beg. No, I'm just kidding. Get down on your hands and knees and pull up some of the weeds, right? Here's the truth, is that so many times if we're not careful, just like a yard or just like a garden, like 1 or 2 weeds can turn into like the whole yard being overrun with weeds. And so if you want your marriage to be blessed, there are going to have to be times when you're going to have to maintain. You're going to have to get down and say, hey, what are the things, what are the weeds, what are the things that are causing the struggle in our marriage? And we're going to have to get down to the root of those things and begin to pull those things up. In fact, I started thinking about what are some of the weeds that we all deal with in our marriage from time to time. Maybe one of them is frustrations. Come on, how many ever been frustrated with your spouse? You don't have to raise your hand for that one, right? But we've all been there, haven't we? Like, oh my goodness, they're driving me crazy. Like, why can't I just help? He never does the dishes and she never makes the bed, and man, he's always just watching the game, and he doesn't help with the kids, and he doesn't put the toilet seat down. I always just wondered, like, ladies, why don't you just look before you sit down? You know what I'm saying? All the guys say amen, right? And it's the little stuff, isn't it? Like the little frustrations. And you know what let's just be real. You know what most of the frustrations in marriage come down to? Most of the time, they just come down to a difference in personality. Yeah. In fact, how many of you, raise your hand, how many of you married someone whose personality is different than yours? That's all over the room, isn't it? Right? And here's the thing, is that's the way it works. They say that opposites attract, right? Until you get married, and then opposites attack. Come on. Because the very thing that drew you to them is also the thing that drives you from them after you get married. The little thing that was like, oh, it's so cute when you were dating is not so cute after you've been married, for a few years, right? And here's the deal. Sometimes it's the frustrations. And here's what we'll do at times. It's like we will allow those little frustrations to begin to take root in our heart and in our life. And it's not long that those frustrations that were small begin to be a little bit bigger. And maybe they're just a difference in personality, or maybe it's just, she does something or he does something. But as those things begin to take root in us, guess what happens? Like if you don't pull those weeds out quickly, they begin to spread, and it's not long until they've taken over your whole garden. You got to pull some weeds. Sometimes it's the frustrations. Here's another one. Sometimes it's fights. In fact, married couples all over the room, help me out. Another little survey. How many of you have recently been in a fight with your spouse? Raise your hand. Come on. How many of you, I don't know, maybe in the last month? Come on, raise your hand. Last month. How many in the last week? How many of you this morning on the way to, we will have prayer team and counselors ready at the end for you. Here's the thing. Like we all have that, don't we? We have arguments, we have disagreements, we have fights, we have times when we don't get along, and sometimes it's because of the little frustration, sometimes it's because of the little stuff. But here's the thing: if you don't take care of those little weeds that begin to, like the little fight or the little thing that's just driving you crazy, if you don't take care of that, if you don't uproot that from your heart, eventually it's going to take over your marriage. It's going to overrun your life. Frustrations and fights. Here's another one. Man, this is a big one. Failures. Sometimes it's little stuff. Sometimes it's the little failures and they begin to add up. But let's be real. Sometimes it's not just differences in personalities and little frustrations and little arguments and little fights. Sometimes it's deep hurts. Sometimes, like, your spouse failed you. They said they would do something and they didn't. They said they would be there, but they weren't. Sometimes it's deep hurts of betrayal, or that they cheated on you, or that, and man, that stuff, here's the deal, guys. Like if you don't learn to uproot that stuff quickly, guess what happens? That stuff, man, that grows into big stuff that will ruin a marriage and will cause marriages to end in divorce. And that's why the garden that God has given us, if we're going to tend to that garden, like we've got to be careful to make sure that we are uprooting the weeds, that we don't allow the weeds to take root in our hearts. In fact, this is what the Hebrew writer was talking about. Look what he says in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse number 15. Look what it says. It says that we ought to watch out that no poisonous root of what? Of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. What is the Hebrew writer saying? He's saying, hey, if we're not careful, those hurts and those disappointments and those failures, they can begin to take root in our lives, and they are a poisonous root. That if we don't take care of them, if we don't learn to pull them up, if we don't learn to let them go, if we don't learn to forgive, what can happen is they begin to poison our lives. Before long, it's not just one weed or two weeds. Before long, our whole garden of our marriage, the whole yard is covered with weeds, and it will hurt us. But notice what it says. It doesn't just say us. It says, what does it do? It corrupts many. So many times we think, well, I can hold on to that unforgiveness because it's only hurting me. No, it's not. The scripture says if we allow bitterness into our hearts, eventually it's not going to just corrupt us. It's going to corrupt our children. It's going to corrupt our grandchildren. It's going to corrupt our friends and our family. Like it's going to seep into every area of our lives. And so what do we have to do? We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to pull up the roots, whether it's the little things, the little frustrations, the little arguments, or it's the big things, the major failures in our lives. We have to learn to let them go. In fact, this is what Paul was talking about in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 26. Look what he says. He says, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Everybody say foothold. You know what that word foothold means? It means an open door. You know, when you allow unforgiveness, when you allow the weeds to take root in your heart, you know what it does? It opens the door. It's like putting your foot in the door and leaving it cracked open for the enemy to come in, for the devil to come into your marriage and into your family. Man, I don't want the devil in my family. I don't want it in your family. So what do we have to do? We have to close the door. We don't leave our foot in the door. We don't leave a foothold. So how do we do that? Well, it says it right there. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Can I be real? There are going to be times in marriage when you're angry. But here's the key. You don't let the sun go down on that anger. You don't go to bed at night angry. You decide, hey, I'm not gonna let that weed take root in our marriage or in my heart. And so every single day, I'm gonna decide, hey, today I'm going to forgive. And tomorrow I'm going to forgive. And before we go to bed at night, we're gonna make sure that everything is good. In fact, some of you, this is gonna be the takeaway that you need to take home today, is that maybe before the day is over, before you go to bed tonight, you sit down with your spouse and you need to tell them, hey, please forgive me, or I forgive you, or you need to talk through some things and make sure that those things are right. Others of you, maybe you got frustrations and stuff that's just been boiling inside of you and your spouse doesn't even know about it. Maybe you don't need to sit down and talk about it. Maybe you need to get out on your knees and give it to God and say, I'm letting it go. I'm not letting these weeds take root in my heart. I'm going to tend to the garden that God has given me, the garden of my marriage. So I got to pull the weeds. Everybody say, pull the weeds. But then the second thing I got to do is I got to plant the seeds. See, it's not just about getting the weeds out. It's actually about planting the seeds so that you can have the good harvest in your life, right? That's what a garden is all about. It's all about sowing and reaping. In fact, look what the scripture says about sowing and reaping. We see some principles about it in Galatians chapter 6 and verse number 7. Let's see what Paul says. He says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man what? A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from their flesh will reap destruction. And whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will what? We will reap a harvest if we don't give up. This passage teaches us this incredible principle. It's a principle of life. It's a principle of sowing and reaping. That if you sow, you're going to reap. And there are some laws of the harvest. They're natural laws and they're spiritual laws. And they apply to every area of our life. They apply to our finances, they apply to our work, they apply to our families, and they apply to our marriages. Whatever you reap, that's what you're going to sow. In fact, here's what I want to do for the rest of this message. I want to talk about the laws of the harvest, and I want to see how they apply to our marriage. So we're just going to take, there's several laws of the harvest, but I'm going to give you the three main ones today. And the first one is this, if you're taking notes, write this down. The first law of the harvest is you reap what you sow. Everybody say, what you sow. What you sow, that's what you're going to reap. Now think about this. Think about it in the natural. If I plant apple seeds, am I going to get an orange tree? Some of y'all are not paying attention. Come on, right? That was the easiest question of the whole day. If I plant apple seeds, am I going to get an orange tree? Why? Because I planted apple seeds. It's a law of the harvest. What I sow is what I'm going to reap, right? Come on, I think we all get that, right? So let's think about this practically in life. Like if you're just going through your day, if someone smiles at you and is kind at you, to you and is loving to you, what are you most likely going to be back to them? You smile. You're going to be gentle and loving and kind. Why? Law of the harvest. They sowed, that's what they're going to reap. If someone is rude to you, if someone, gives you the one finger salute in traffic, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you going to do back to them? You're going to love them, and you're going to smile and say, Jesus loves you because you are a Christian and because you have a LifeGate sticker on the back of your car. Come on, amen, right? But what are you going to want to do? Don't show me. Some of y'all are going to try to show me. No, why? Because it's the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. Let's apply this to our marriage. In your marriage, if you're loving, patient, gentle, kind to your spouse, what are they probably going to be back to you? Loving, patient, gentle, kind, sweet, right? Because, that's how the law of the harvest works. You reap what you sow. Think about it. If you're complaining and if you're always critical and you're always comparing, what are you going to get back from your spouse? You're probably going to get defensiveness and anger and self-justification. Why? Law of the harvest. The harvest you reap will be determined by the seeds that you plant. Now, guys, how many dudes in the house? Come on, all over the room, right? I'm going to help you today. You ready for this? Write this down or put this in your heart. Get this ready. Here's the deal. Women are multipliers. How many guys know what I'm talking about, right? Whatever you give them, you know what they're going to do? They're going to multiply it and give it back to you, right? Think about this. All right, think. Think about this, men, when you got married and you had that bachelor pad apartment, you know what I'm talking about? And it had hardly anything in it and nothing on the walls and it smelled kind of stinky and dishes everywhere and whatever. Then you get married and what happens? That woman, she takes that bachelor pad and she multiplies it, right? And she makes it smell good and she puts stuff on the walls and she takes nothing and makes it something. Come on, how many guys you know what I'm talking about, right? Some of you ladies in the house, you're good cooks, right? You can take the nothing that we have in the pantry and you multiply it and have a feast. Come on, you know what I'm saying, right? And here's the deal, like, if you don't like what you're getting, then guess what? You got to think about, what am I giving? Because whatever you give, guys, whatever you give your wife, she's going to take it and she's going to multiply it. If you give her compliments and if you give her kindness and if you give her gentleness and love, she's going to give you what you're wanting. Come on, right? Ladies, how many know I'm talking about? You're more in the mood when your husband is, come on, right? Don't act like me, act like you never. Y'all are all here because of it. I'm just saying. What if you give, they're gonna multiply it back. If you give, physical love and attention, they're going to give you a baby, Trust me, I got 3. You give them a hard time, they're going to give you a hard life. Because they're multipliers. You're going to reap what you sow. If you don't like what you're getting, then you need to think about, what am I planting? What am I giving? It's the law of the harvest. God cannot be deceived, or don't be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man will reap what he sows. But the second law of the harvest is this, is you don't just reap what you sow, you reap where you sow. Everybody say, where you sow. Where you sow. If I plant a tree over here, am I going to get a tree over here? No, that sounds so simple, right? Why? Because I planted the tree over here. It's the law of the harvest. I'm going to reap where I sow. Now, how does this apply to marriage or to relationships? Here's where it applies, is that so many times, like, we're sowing all of our seeds into the wrong place and wondering why our marriage is not flourishing and wondering why our marriage is not growing, but we're planting all of our seeds into our hobby. We're spending all our time and all our attention. Guess what? If you spend all your time and all your attention on your hobby, is it going to help your marriage? No, it might help your golf game. It might help you be a better hunter. It might help you, basket weave or whatever your hobby is. But it's not going to help your marriage. Why? Because you're going to reap where you sow. If you're putting all your attention and all your energy and all your seeds into your job, is it going to help your marriage? No, it might help you get a promotion, but it's not going to help your marriage to be better. If you're putting all your attention in the kids, this is what a lot of people do. Oh, it's all about the kids, all the focus on the kids and the kids and the kids. And yes, your kids, we're all about the next generation here at LifeGate. And yes, they should be a focus, but they are not the focus in your marriage. Jesus is first and your spouse is second. Come on, right? And if you're putting all of your attention and all your seeds and sowing into the kids, is that going to help your marriage grow? No. And sometimes the reason that our marriage is not what we want it to be is because it's not because we're not planting seeds. It's because we're planting seeds in the wrong place. And we got to determine, hey, I got to put some seeds into the place where I want to see the growth happen in my life. It's the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. You reap where you sow. And here's the deal. Your marriage is only going to be as good as you decide for it to be. So you got to decide, where am I going to plant the seeds? Am I willing to invest in my marriage? Am I willing to have the hard conversation? Am I willing to go to counseling? Am I willing to speak the kind words? Am I willing to spend the time together? Am I willing to do the work to plant the seeds in the garden that God has given me? The responsibility he has given me, the relationship that he has placed me in, am I willing to do? And some people go, I don't know if I am. Like, some people, you're maybe even sitting here today and you're pushing back and going, but Pastor, like, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like, having date nights and going to counseling and sharing my feelings and forgiving and doing all this stuff. Well, can I respectfully and lovingly, as your pastor, say this? What other area of your life does that work? Can you say, well, I don't feel like going to work. I've been working at this job 15 years. I think that ought to be enough. I shouldn't have to work anymore. Is that going to work? Oh, I don't feel like paying my taxes. Come on, how's that working out for you? I don't feel like taking care of that baby. They've been crying every night. I'm tired of it. I ain't doing it no more. But we say, I don't feel like working on my marriage. How's that working? See, you're gonna reap what you sow. And you're gonna reap where you sow. And that leads me to the last law of the harvest is that you're gonna reap after you sow. And this is where it gets frustrating. This is where a lot of people, that's why we start going, I don't feel like doing it anymore because I've been doing it. And I'm not seeing the harvest. I'm not seeing the result that I wanted to see. And I might as well just quit. I might as well just kind of give up. And I've been trying this. We've been doing this. We've been working on this. And it's just like the harvest is not coming. And it's easy to just go, just forget it. It's not worth it. I don't want to do it anymore. It reminds me of this story. I'll wrap up with this. This story that Jesus tells, this parable. Talks about in the book of Luke. Talks about this guy who had a tree. He had a whole garden. And he comes to the tree and he notices that the tree, he expected there to be fruit, but there was no fruit. And so he calls the gardener in and he says, just cut the thing down because I've been expecting fruit from this tree and it hadn't been fruit on this tree in 3 years. Might as well just chop it down. And the gardener in his wisdom, I love what he says. He says, hey, let's don't chop it down. In fact, here's what we're going to do is I'm going to dig around the roots just a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of fertilizer to it. And then we're going to give it a year. And come back in a year, and I believe it will produce some fruit. And I think about that, and it applies in so many areas of our life that sometimes we come to our marriage expecting fruit. But the problem is, like, we haven't done anything to invest in the marriage. We haven't planted any seed. Guess what? You can't expect fruit from the garden of your marriage if you haven't been planting any seed, right? And the gardener says basically to the guy, like, you can't come and expect this tree to give you apples when you haven't given it any attention in the last 3 years. But instead of cutting it down, here's what we're going to do. We're going to dig around the roots. Some of you need to decide, hey, instead of giving up on my marriage, I'm going to dig a little deeper. And I'm going to get down to the root of whatever's going on. And we're going to uproot some of the stuff. And we're going to pull up some of the weeds. And then we're going to add a little bit of fertilizer to it. Guess what, guys? You know what fertilizer's made out of? Manure. It stinks, right? And here's the deal. Sometimes the things that you're going to need in order to have a fruitful marriage are going to be things that at the moment, they kind of stink. Going to counseling, it kind of stinks at first. Saying I'm sorry, it kind of stinks. Come on, forgiving, that kind of stinks, right? But when you get down to the root and you're willing to go through some of the crap, some of the stuff that's kind of stinky, and you're willing to give it a little bit of time. The law of the harvest always works. If you plant the seeds, you're going to reap the harvest where you planted them, and it's not going to be tomorrow or the next day it's going to be after you have planted the seeds. Eventually, there's going to come a time. In fact, that's why Paul was talking about in Galatians. He says, hey, don't be deceived. You're going to reap what you sow, and whatever it is that you're planting, that's what you're going to have. But don't get weary and don't give up, because at the proper time, you're going to reap a harvest if you just don't quit. And so some of you, that's the word for you today. You need to decide, man, I'm not cutting the tree down. I'm going to invest more in it. We're going to dig around the roots, and we're going to uproot some stuff. We're going to get rid of some stuff, and we're going to do some work, and we're going to plant some seeds, and we're going to put some fertilizer in. It might stink for a little while, but I know that eventually it's going to bring fruit in my life because I just didn't give up and quit. Last story reminds me of the Chinese bamboo. I don't know if you ever heard this before, but a Chinese bamboo shoot, if you ever seen it, they grow so tall, it's crazy. And yet that's not how they start. Chinese bamboo shoot, it starts out as a seed under the ground. And for 5 years, it sits there under the ground. I studied it this week as I was looking into it. That a Chinese bamboo shoot, they have to water it and fertilize it every single day. And for 5 years, it doesn't even break up above the ground. Every day they're watering it and fertilizing it for 5 years and don't even see anything happening. But after 5 years, that bamboo shoot will break through the ground, and in the next, I wrote it down, make sure I get it right. I don't want to tell y'all no lies. But in the next 90 days, it will grow, or in the next 5 weeks, it will grow 90 feet. 5 years. Watering, fertilizing, seeing nothing. After the 5th year, 5 weeks, 90 feet in the air. That's all the harvest. Some of you are going, I ain't seeing nothing. It's been 5 years. Been planting, seeding, watering, fertilizing, doing all the stuff. I don't even see anything happening. Hey, that's when God begins to work. At the proper time, we reap a harvest. If what? If we don't give up. That's the word for you today. God's given us a garden. Just like he did Adam and Eve, he's given you a garden. Your marriage, maybe you're not married, maybe it's in a relationship with someone in your life, but he's given you that garden to cultivate it. And it takes love, and it takes time, and it takes attention, and it takes work. It takes pulling up some weeds. It takes planting some seeds. It takes going through some fertilizer. It takes getting down to the root. But if you don't give up, I'm telling you, you're going to experience the blessing and the harvest in your life if you just decide, I'm going to trust God. We're not getting divorced. That word is not even in our vocabulary. We're going to do the work, and we're going to believe God to bring the harvest.
Thank you for joining us online today. Make sure and hit subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for more notifications. We can't wait to engage with you this week.